The ACC just looked at Brett Yormark and said, come steal whoever you want. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That's Cameron Stewart from Locked On Baylor. He hosts the show because his basketball team is good sometimes. We will start with now is the time for the Big 12 to steal ACC teams like Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, because the conference just pulled its pants down and peed all over those universities. They now have an opportunity to join the Big 12. Brett Yormark can make that business move pretty darn soon as well. Then Mack Rhoades of the Baylor Bears has been appointed to the head of the College Football Playoff Committee for 2025. What does that mean? He'll probably get steamrolled by the SEC and the Big Ten still. He'll be waterboarded by those conferences. And then Josh Pate hates to love the Big 12. This is a new development, and it's weird. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Thanks for making our shows your first listen every single day. Cam, the ACC just restructured. Via the settlement, they're going to pay schools like Florida State and Clemson $10 million more or more than that a year, and pay schools like Wake Forest, SMU, Duke, $7 million less per year because they just don't have the right brand size. And schools like Pitt, Virginia Tech, even UNC and Louisville could be at the bottom of this barrel in the ACC based on how they're building their algorithm. Hey, I know a place where we all can be friends, where we all can go. This is where Brett Yormark steps in and says, we don't have a scale. We don't have an algorithm. Come make the same as everybody else. Pitt, Louisville, NC State, and that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, first off, Drake, I appreciate you letting me on the show. Was the Era Tours? Was the Eras Tour? Was that pretty good?
What is it? What is it? Is it the bracelets? Is it the nails? Is it the paint all over my hands?
Look, the girls who get it. Okay, the girls who don't. The ACC. Oof. The late ACC, the late great ACC. No. Yeah, this is a weird situation that they put themselves in of like, hey, the other conferences are trying to incentivize being a good brand. Like you come in here, you're going to make some more money, and they're basically making super conferences without making super conferences. What if we take the existing structure we have right now and really sweeten the pot for Clemson and Florida State, but it just gets really bad for everyone else? You think they'll stay? You think they'll come aboard? And what the best part about this is for the Big 12 is not just that this is happening, but whose brands apparently suck because they're brands we thought were good. And lo and behold, it's like, no, you're actually not bringing in any money. You would be a perfect poach candidate for one of these other conferences. That's what surprised me, was seeing the teams in the ACC that actually aren't good brands, that we've been thinking have been good brands for a long time. And I don't know how much of it adds up.
Well, they're basically only taking viewership into account with this. So UNC, who has now to me become the most important player, we get it. Florida State and Clemson are likely going to leave. UNC is kind of the domino that if they fall, the ACC doesn't exist anymore. And based on what the conference is doing, UNC is 7th in the league. They're going to make less money now because the Atlantic Coast Conference will only look at TV viewership in determining who's going to make more money. And so they're going, hey, we have the Jordan brand. Like, we're bringing you a ton of stuff, and now you're just going to pay us less?
Well, yeah, like think about this. Just I know we're not allowed to do this, but let's think of this from like a cultural standpoint rather than strictly a football standpoint. Like just the nature of college sports in general and branding and all those buzzwords and that crap. Like UNC is sitting there and being like, really? Like Clemson and Florida State, they're that much more valued. That like we're North Carolina, like we're one of the great basketball programs of all time. We're not even that bad in football. You know, we've got the Argyle and Jordan and the Interlocking logo, all these great players that played here and benefactors. And you can go anywhere around the country and find UNC fans that have no connection to Chapel Hill whatsoever. I don't know how much you can do that with Florida State or with Clemson, but they've got great football. Like traditionally, I know Florida State not this year. That's where it becomes fascinating to me. Like UNC's got to sit there and be like, Screw this. Like, what? You're telling me that we are the seventh most you're telling us Stanford is more valuable than us? Georgia Tech is more valuable than us? This is the Atlantic Coast Conference. We are the Atlantic Coast Conference. So that's why I find it interesting. And you said it right there perfectly. Like, that's the domino, right? It's like what would happen in the Big 12 of, like, you know, when UT Oklahoma leaves and Kansas is sitting there like, really? Except if Kansas wasn't ass at all traditionally, you know, like if they were just okay, they'd be like, seriously? So Carolina is the key to this. And what's funny is wherever they go, it would actually really behoove them to take Duke with them. I know it's not like a 2 state schools thing. Like, they'll probably have to bring NC State just as like lawmakers would want. But it would actually really help them if they brought Duke with them wherever they went. But they're the ones who are going to be the most red hot after this.
Somehow, magically, we are in a world where North Carolina, who I don't think will go to the Big 12, but where North Carolina can pay their $200 million, which, by the way, a man by the name of Michael Jordan could be like, yeah,
okay,
let me dig through my pockets of the clothes I haven't worn in years and just here. They can now go to the SEC or the Big 10. I don't believe the Big 12 is the landing spot for North Carolina. Could it be? Possibly, but they're going to shoot higher than that. And the same goes for every team in that conference, like Miami, who has an opportunity to shoot higher. The Big 12 can look at Duke, who's 12th based on Nielsen ratings in this little algorithm over the last 5 years that has been derived. They're 12th. But Brett Yormark sees value in Duke. He sees value in Pitt, who sits at 9th, or Virginia Tech, who sits at 10th. Because guess what? Some of those schools aren't very good right now at football. And Duke may never be good at football, but their basketball product is still so good. They can carry themselves, can carry their weight in the Big 12. And guess what? Brett Yormark is not just looking at your football viewership numbers to determine whether or not you're a valuable member of the conference. The Big 12 can build off of that.
Yeah, I think Brett Yormark, for, I guess, lack of a better term, just looks at it with like more common sense. Again, when we look at that list of whose brand values, it's like, dude, you there's just no world you can tell me that Georgia Tech is 8 spots, 10 spots higher than Duke. Like, I'm sorry, you can't swing a dead cat in this country without hitting a Duke basketball fan who doesn't even know what state they're in. You know what I mean? But you can't tell me that for Georgia Tech or even Louisville, which has good basketball prowess as well. Like, you can't do that. And the same thing goes for UNC. Like, you can't give me that Georgia Tech is a bigger brand because they're in Atlanta. Like, and that's where I think Brett Yormark looks at this. What can we sell? Duke will sell always.
Is that like full stop?
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
And this conference should certainly look in the direction of Duke. And Duke should look at the Big 12 because I don't see a spot right now where the Big 10 or the SEC want the Duke Blue Devils to join their conference. I don't think that's coming in the near future. Coming up, you get a whole lot of Mac Rhodes on your televisions. That's a Big 12 athletic director who is now the College Football Playoff Committee board chair. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Oh, guess who here drives a Nissan? It's me. Today's show brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan, the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, Locked On college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys are showcasing the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada clear-cut Team of the Week, the Houston Cougars. Since joining the Big 12 last season, the Cougars have gone combined 33-4 in conference games, winning the regular season title by multiple games both years. There's no team in college basketball that has more capability right now than the rugged Kelvin Sampson defense and that rugged Armada. Houston's tenacious defense leads the nation in fewest points allowed per game for the second straight season. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. That's exactly what the Houston Cougars have done. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road, ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any Nissan outstanding vehicle. Take the Nissan Armada Rogue or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. That's nissanusa.com. Gamarino, ESPN and the College Football Playoff are now bowing to the Big 12 Conference as Mack Rhoades, athletic director of Baylor University, takes over as the board chair of the committee. He will be the one who is justifying why 9-3 Alabama will make it into the playoff over 11-2 Baylor next year, saying, well, we just thought strength of schedule. We just thought objectively the strength. My worry is, while the Big 12 now has like control at the very top with the board chair, he's going to be pulling his hair out while the rest of the committee still does what it wants to do. Do you think this is the moment the Big 12 retakes control of college football? Or is this just a puppet who's going to be used as anti-Big 12 propaganda?
I've gone way back and forth on this because we know Mack Rhoades. Like, he's a guy with conviction here. Baylor's not his only stop that he's been in college athletics, and it's not the only stop at a place that gets disrespected, like Houston, outside of Nissan commercials. Missouri. These teams are thought of as afterthoughts, and Mack Rhoades has raised the level in each of those athletic departments. But then again, the overarching thought I have, and the one that came to me as soon as I saw this news, was he's going to be like if the foreman of the jury thought OJ was guilty, but he's the one with the cameras in his face after they announce who's going to the college football playoff, and having to be like, well, with Alabama, the glove didn't fit. Like, he must have quit. Like, he's going to have to do that. I think it's good that you have a voice for the voiceless, so to speak, at the top, this silent majority that we have in the truck stop conference. But then again, it's like Mack's been on the committee the last couple of years, at least the last 1 year. And it didn't help then. But I'm hoping that having that guy at the top is just like, hey guys, here's what we can look at here. Here's how we missed on having a second Big 12 team last year. Like, I just think there is, like, maybe this is the eternal optimist in me, that there's just enough of a voice in that room from him that the Big 12 will at least be looked at differently. But we still don't even know. The age-old question is, what are they even looking for the college football playoff? Are they looking at strength of schedule? Are they looking at best teams? Are they looking at who's been the most battle tested? Like, we still don't know what that is.
Well, as a credentialed member of the Baylor media, I'm sure you could call Mack, or Matt Mosley could give Mack a ring. And that's going to be a very interesting weekly segment from now on with Mack on the show. Cam, let's talk best case, worst case. You said you've gone back and forth on this one.
Yeah.
The best case, is there a world where Mack Rhoades goes cojones on the table, burrito on the table, and says, here's what it's about to look like. We're going to respect everybody in college football, and he wins? Is that a viable, do you see that as a viable outcome to his appointment?
Yeah. And so what that would look like is, all right, like this year, right? You have one group of 5 team in there in Boise State. You have 2 ACC teams, but really 1 ACC team, because the committee doesn't see Clemson as an ACC team. So SMU, Boise State, and 1 Big 12 team in Arizona State. So what that's going to take in the 12-team playoff is having 4 non-Big 10 SEC teams in there. So I definitely think that's possible. Best case scenario is 7-5 Baylor, narrowly missing out on the Big 12 championship game, is in the 12-team field. That's the best scenario with Mack Rhoades at the helm. So yeah, and this is where it comes, like, this is what we think of as Big 12 fans. Like, it doesn't take that much more for us to feel like there's respect. Like, if this year Iowa State or BYU got into 11-win teams, if one of those teams got in the playoff, I think Big 12 fans wouldn't have a lot to complain about going into the playoff or right now. But it's, again, it just feels like we're completely overlooked entirely. And so I think it doesn't take much for Mack Rhoades to kind of change the way that the Big 12 is viewed in that room. And for good measure, the ACC as well. Like, again, Clemson, they see them as just a bonus baby SEC team. They really don't see them as an ACC team, as evidenced by how often they get in. But I think it is going to be a good thing. That's where I've settled on, because it's not going to take that much more for us Big 12 fans to feel like there's some more respect.
Let's go worst case scenario, because Kirk Schultz was the commissioner. What do they even call this role? Are you the committee chair?
I think
commissioner. I get okay. So
they try to take the word head out of as much as possible.
Yeah, was the board chair for a year, and he was the athletic director at Washington State when that
you
all
can
went.
be head in a chair. You can get head. No, sorry. Go ahead.
There was remember what was the guy's name? University of Arkansas athletic director who was also. I think he was the first one, and then he went to Kansas, hired Les Miles, and both of them got fired.
John L. Smith.
No, close.
Who was that guy? Was he the AD at Arkansas?
No, he was the head football coach.
Yeah, baby.
It was the Arkansas AD that hired John. No, he got fired Jeff Long, right as John L. Smith was coming in. It was crazy.
Jeff Long.
And Long was the first one. Then we had Kirk Schultz a couple of years ago, and Schultz was the president at Washington State. And it didn't help the Pac-12. He was just kind of like, well, sorry, guys, Alabama still exists. And then you had the guy last year, Ward Manuel, who is Michigan. And now it's, come on, we don't hate the Big 12. We just appointed one of your athletic directors who's been on the board as the chair. It feels like it's going to be Kirk Schultz. His university was falling apart as he was leading this committee of people. This feels more to me like, on the worst case scenario side, you've got a puppet in Mac Rhodes at the table who is going. I see it. 11-1 BYU, 11-2 Baylor, 11-2 Kansas State. He will have to sit on ESPN and justify against his own conference, whether he wants to or not. He'll have no choice.
Right. Yeah. This is the worst case scenario, and
coward.
Also
they'll call him a coward, guaranteed.
Colin Coward. Yes. The worst case scenario also is not that unrealistic from what we've seen in college football, right? Yeah. Like, would it's like I don't think it's going to go that way, but would it stun anybody if Mac Rhodes becomes a puppet for the CFP committee? Like, no, I don't think so. The flip side would be, another forced Cam Stewart analogy would be like, remember the Titans? They're like, all right, we got to integrate the school. We'll have a token African-American coach, but then he's actually really good and lays down the law. Like, that's what it would be. Mac Rhodes being like, I'm your token guy, but I'm going to make your life hell. But it is going to be, if it comes to that, really embarrassing for everyone involved if he's got to say, well, Kansas State only beat 2 ranked teams this year and 8-4 Auburn. Look at their recruiting class. Like, if that's what it comes to, that's a failure on all levels for the Big 12 and for Baylor too. Like, that's a terrible look.
Now,
and by the way, I mean, Mac has been on this committee. There's all kinds of committees that the Baylor president, Linda Livingstone, is on, and it hasn't made the Big 12 much more respectable in the public eye already. So
that's where I was going next. Linda Livingstone's a part of a lot of these. There are Baylor administrators who are very active with the NCAA and active in college football. And I guess nationally, they have a fairly good name, but then you go locally inside the 4 walls at Baylor, and there are question marks about leadership in athletics the last few years.
And you know what? Like, I don't like taking such a pessimistic look at this, but I've thought this for a while, with having Mac and Linda on a lot of these boards with the NCAA and this national stuff. It's because Ann Richards is dead. Like, if this comes to another
president, athletic director.
No, but if this comes to another situation where the conference dissolves and they're on the edge of like, who will we take into the next conference? There's no Ann Richards to lobby for them anymore. Yeah. And so this is almost like hey, we've scratched your back for so long. Look at all the committees we've been on. We've been a part of this whole process. You can't leave us out. We're at the table. So I do think there is some of that. I like Mac Rhodes as an AD. I understand that some Baylor fans are upset with the moves over the last couple of years. I get that. I think he's a great AD and has been in a couple different places. But he could really help us out here. He could really help us all out here.
That is Bill Gates' role now. He's the new Ann Richards at Baylor University. Bill Gates, big donor. Coming up, Josh Pate hates to love the Big 12. What does that mean? He doesn't talk about us, and he admitted that. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey. Crazy that our two sponsors today are Nissan and Supply House, because I own a Nissan, and Supply House is where I've gone because I just bought a house. At Supply House, I can get plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, all of my skilled trade stuff. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources, complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Josh Pate, who I like, who has been on Locked On Big 12 before, comes to the table on his show this week and says, I love the Big 12. It's my favorite conference. Will I talk about them on this show? Absolutely not.
Of course not.
but I love the Big 12. And that, of course, is paraphrasing. It's very much paraphrasing, but someone called him out on Twitter, on Reddit and Twitter both, I guess, saying that Josh Pate is not a Big 12 fan, not a Big 12 guy. He treats it like a Make-A-Wish conference when he talks about it. Like, oh, look how cute and fun they are. And Pate kind of opened a segment about this and was like, yeah, you're spot on there. Because what he said, in essence, is the same thing as saying, I'm the host of Locked On Big 10, but I won't say anything about Purdue football because it doesn't get me clicks or views. My listeners don't want to hear about it. It's the ESPN model. It's the on-3 model. It's the play the hits model. We're going to have to do, like, there's no way we can talk about the Big 12. And he keeps saying, because I'm a national show. I can't talk about the Big 12. He didn't say it explicitly that he needs to talk about the Big 10 and the SEC, but that's where the money is made. We're moving out of an era where we can just listen to a podcast, listen to a national football show that's going to pick like, oh, big storyline, big thing from this conference. And instead, it's just the SEC, it's just the Big 10, and it's really just the SEC.
Yeah, and like, look, I mean, industry secret here. There are all things, like for all of us that do shows, there are things that we might want to talk about.
When was your last equestrian episode?
I mean, yeah, like there you have it.
To me, the Big 12's not equestrian. Sorry, equestrian.
Well, sure.
But also, the girl in college who was on the equestrian team.
But also, like, there are times where you kind of have to talk about it. And like, I saw this and thinking of the Big 12 this past year. I know they didn't have 4 teams in the playoff, but you had a pretty outstanding story of a team that was picked to finish last in this conference, winning the conference and going to the playoff. They had one of the most entertaining players in college football in Cam Scadaboo. And we want to talk about most entertaining players in college football, like maybe the best player in college football. I wonder what conference he played in. I wonder who has the most famous head coach in college football. Like it's happening here in the Big 12. And so, yeah, maybe, if Iowa State gets a big win over Kansas State, but it's the same week as the Iron Bowl, you're not talking as much about Farmageddon, but we're talking about ignoring an entire conference here.
But the Iron Bowl doesn't mean as much anymore.
Well, yes,
push
sure.
back on that, like it's insane to me that instead of being like, you know what, hey, and there's a great comment on this was posted on Twitter by Derek Duke, who covers the Big 12 very well, by the way. The comment says from Jack Barr. So he is saying he thinks there is merit to pushing the perspective that the Big 12 belongs, but there are too many people who believe otherwise who just tells them what they want to hear.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be the one that pushes that. Yeah.
But I love him.
And he says in there too, right? What does he say at the beginning? He says something like, "That's great for you guys talking on Reddit, but I have a show." And he immediately says, he goes, "I'm not trying to sound douchey. I'm not." And then later on, he goes, as if to not sound douchey again, he's like, the network wanted me to go to the Big 10 championship game.
Yeah.
I didn't. The next was the SEC championship game. Where did I go? I went to Arlington. I went to that game. It was like, oh, thank you, Josh Pate. Please forgive us. Thank you. You went to a game. You did a show all that week leading up to it and a show all the week after it about all the other conferences, but you did go to that game. Thank you. We're done here.
I find it so interesting. And this is where, it was great. Pate said something along the lines, he was misquoted or something about the Big 12 not being a power conference or a power league because of its recruiting a few weeks ago. And Spencer McLaughlin does a show about it. Pate actually tweets at Spencer and is like, should have invited me on your show. Would have explained it. And so Spencer,
better than having you on the show.
Spencer invites him on the show. Pate doesn't ever respond to the invite. And
that's a classic move, by the way.
It's like this was a guy who rose from the ashes. This felt like the Shane Gillis of college football podcasters for a bit. We're like, that's the everyman. We all love Josh Pate. And you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It is insane to me.
It's kind of like me at Locked On Baylor, by the way. Pretty similar. Yeah.
You're fairly cynical. Everyone in that chair, you become that at year 2. In this scenario with Josh Pate, it's like, I still like you. You still got the Gillis deal to him where you're like, okay, he's not ESPN. He still has the funny logo and it doesn't look as professional as a studio show like Stephen A. Smith has. And there's something endearing about that. But wild to me, come to the table. You guys are accusing me of a lot of stuff. You guys are saying a lot of mean things about me. You're saying I don't love the Big 12. I do love the Big 12. I'm just not going to talk about them.
You've got to trust me on this one.
It's a crazy apology. I don't know what he was trying to get at, or at least just put to rest. Hey, you can keep saying these things on Reddit because they're true. Because and in that where the original Reddit post says he treats the Big 12 like a Make-A-Wish conference. And Pate in response to that was like, hey, man, I loved the Arizona State story. I loved those little ragtag guys who got out there and did their bad. The Cinderella story, he called it. Like, you're being accused of making the Big 12 a Make-A-Wish. And somehow it's just wild. He kind of folded into, Reddit's kind of right about this one.
He's like, the Big 12, if there's 2 things that conference loves, it's the ladies and John Cena. Like, this is how he's treating this. Like, he is just like, yeah, those guys, they have a ton of fun out there, man. It's like, it's just, to use a great pun here, I guess, because it fits. It's really patronizing. You like that?
Good.
I know what that word means. I learned it like 6 months ago.
Not to be a douchebag, to quote one of my favorite podcasters. Not to be a douchebag. I bought a house. It's going
to take a lot of work, by the way.
I bought a house recently. Recently.
Yeah, that's 24-year-old buying a house. Yeah, that's
one of my favorite tweets that I got from a burner account was, who gave Drake Toll enough money to buy a house? He doesn't deserve that, which is great. Got like 30 likes, too.
As I sit in here in an apartment where you can hear the dinner being made, yeah.
These things occurred, right? Because the Big 12 pays my bills, not the conference itself, but hosting. I don't even get to host a national show where I get to discuss, how good Carson Beck is or wax poetic about Arch Manning. No, I'm within the confines of Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Baylor. And that pays my bills because there are people who love the Big 12. There are T-shirt randos who like to click on the first 15 seconds of a video about the SEC, so you get 200,000 views. But there are people who actually like to digest and hear about the Big 12 conference.
Not to peel back the curtain too much, it is one of the best performing podcasts in our great network. The Big 12 has fans. They've got a reach. They've got people.
But you got to understand, it's a national show, so we can't talk about them here. Spencer McLaughlin would never talk about the Big 12 on Locked On College Football. Nope,
never had me on. That's for sure.
Nope,
never had me on for a good segment. I'll give him that.
Is it the Ash Wednesday today?
Oh yeah. Go thank Mark Wahlberg for dying for our sins.
Congratulations, everybody, for Ash Wednesday.
The 40-day Mark Wahlberg challenge, I believe, is what they call it.
Yes, it is. At Real Cam Stewart on Twitter.
Shout out to the Catholics. BC, terrible branding. Oof.
Formerly known as X. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.